Hello and welcome, friends. My name is Francie here, once again bringing you some Kerbal Space Program, and we're taking a look with tips and tutorials. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. And I've had this footage for a while. We built the rocket. We did the tips and tutorials video of how to build this rocket. And if you want to check that video out of how to actually build a rocket, definitely check that out. But we're going to go ahead and look at landing them. SpaceX has inspired me with their own landing of SES-10, a first reused orbital class rocket. And the first thing we're going to jump in here for our tips is action grouping. Being able to eliminate certain engines from firing, just as SpaceX does, creates a much easier way to land your rocket. Rather than having a very sensitive throttle when you're coming in for a landing, this allows you to a little bit easier, just smoothly get into your landing. If you have all your engines firing, as we do now, with very little fuel, very little weight, very little mass, then the problem is going to be, it's going to be very sensitive, and it makes it harder to land. Now, maybe you like that. Maybe that's your preference. I like to get rid of some of those engines. So through action grouping, we can actually kill it to 4 engines, or 6 engines, or 3 engines, which is typically what I use. Again, you're going to have to fine-tune this. Depending on the rocket that you're trying to land, the core stage that you're trying to land, you may have to adjust. You may notice, if you did watch my previous video about how to actually build this rocket, I added an extra fuel tank at the bottom, and that's just something you learn as you test out your landing process. And that's something I really encourage you to do. If you're building a rocket to land it, again, make sure that you test it over and over again, because you want to have some consistency. Again, we sent the second stage on its way, and one thing to keep in mind, too, if you're trying to land a rocket is Kerbal Space Program has a limit for how far parts can go away from the main, the main entity, the root part, I believe it is. In this case, it's 22.6 kilometers. That's if you're not using mods. Mods can give you some workaround to that. So it's important to have a powerful second stage if you actually are trying to get that into orbit. Otherwise, you may be in trouble. But we're not really worried too much. We're actually focused on the landing process here. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to land our core stage. And so we flipped ourselves around. We completely negated all our speed, our horizontal speed. And now we're heading back to KSP. Now, this is very fuel intensive. This is probably the most fuel intensive landing really that you can do, because you have to negate all that velocity you built up. You to send your second stage and your payload into space. And so we negated it all and headed back to where we came from. So this is very inefficient, honestly. And we will do another launch and show you maybe a little bit better way to doing that. But this is also the coolest way, I think, just to go ahead and just to see your stage come back and land at where you sent it from. And again, this is practice. This takes time. I don't know. I don't think this was my first attempt at landing this. So quick save, especially in your early progress. Now, you may be somebody who likes to just let the dice or let the cards fall where they may, right? But it's good to practice. Get a feel for landing, right? And as you can see, we just gently touch down. We make use of some of those autopilot controls, using the retrograde autopilot command, or whatever you want to call it, there by your nav ball, is extremely useful for kind of negating your horizontal velocity and your velocity at its maximum ability. It's the most effective way to negate your speed, really, is to be doing that, to be following that retrograde marker. So follow that, and then when you get close, maybe switch to stability. Go back just your standard stability mode versus the retrograde, because sometimes you'll get a little wobbly as you really start to hit 0 meters per second. Now, we're going to launch again, and this time we're going to show you just a standard water landing. Now, obviously, you could do this on a drone ship of some kind. That way you're not actually landing your ship in the water. However, that requires very, very precise types of landings, and that's honestly, unfortunately, not something I think I'm really capable of at the moment. Maybe you are. You're probably better than me. So take a shot at it. However, you can also land it in the water and still fully recover it. Now, realistically, landing a rocket, its engines, its parts into seawater, salt water, not usually the best idea. However, Kerbal doesn't seem to mind. Who knows? Maybe it's fresh water, and maybe its water is non-corrosive or something like that. We just truly don't know. But for the sake of this, it's something that you can do, and it's a good way to save fuel too, because when you just go on that parabolic arc, all you got to do is bring it back down and land it wherever the chips may fall. All you got to do is slow it down here, which is exactly what we're going to do. And if the rocket tips over in the water, that's okay. But as you can see, we come in for a nice little watery splashdown. Coming in, you know, this is good practice, and you can see the water's dispersing, and nailed it. All right, well, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, and of course, as always, I will see you next time.